What if the exhaustion you feel after 2 minutes of casual small talk isn't a personality flaw, but proof that your brain operates on a different evolutionary frequency? You know the exact moment. You're trapped at a party or standing by the office water cooler when someone looks at you, shrugs, and speaks. They smile casually and ask, "Crazy weather we're having, right?" And inside your chest, your soul just quietly and completely shrinks. You force a polite smile, nod your head, and script an entirely meaningless response. But every single second of it feels like intense manual labor. You finally walk away feeling completely hollowed out, wondering why a simple 2-minute conversation about basic weekend plans felt like running an exhausting marathon. Slowly, you start to internalize the failure. You label yourself as socially awkward, deeply antisocial, or coldly and permanently detached from others. But let me assure you, you are none of those things. Your exhaustion is not a broken defect needing a cure. Today, we are dissecting the hidden psychological mechanics behind why you despise surface-level chatter so intensely. There is a reason. Because your brain's violent rejection of the mundane isn't a modern malfunction, it's a direct byproduct of how deeply you are wired to process reality. The painful truth is, people who hate small talk don't actually hate human beings, they just hate the artificial barriers it builds. It feels like standing helplessly at a toll booth of human connection, forced to pay a costly tax of fake enthusiasm just to pass through. For the average person, this social script is entirely automatic. It costs them nothing and yields free, easy conversational energy. But for an analytical, highly sensitive mind, forcing this shallow performance triggers a genuine form of agonizing psychological claustrophobia. To truly understand why this interaction drains you so severely, we have to look closely at cognitive load theory. When you engage in small talk, you aren't just exchanging pleasant words. Your working memory is forced to run a massive, draining background program. You have to monitor your physical posture, fake complex micro-expressions, actively suppress your true thoughts, and micromanage a hollow dialogue. You are forced to wear a heavy, exhausting mask, and the immense processing power required to maintain it leaves your mental battery depleted. But the hidden neurobiology goes even deeper. Research reveals that an intense distaste for small talk is highly correlated with specific neural traits. It is linked directly to high sensory processing sensitivity and a cognitive dominance of introverted intuition inside your nervous system. Your nervous system is naturally designed to completely bypass the shallow surface. It is constantly hunting for underlying patterns and motives. It craves raw, unfiltered authenticity. When you force a brain like that to stay in the shallow end, it experiences literal mental starvation. It's like being desperately, deeply dehydrated in a desert and trying to drink out of an entirely empty glass. Your brain doesn't care about what someone did over the weekend. It craves to know how they are actually surviving their life. It wants to know what uniquely drives them and what terrifies them late at night when the distracting lights finally go out. You naturally crave systemic substance over chaotic, superficial noise, and this design makes perfect sense from an evolutionary perspective. In early ancestral human tribes, the superficial networkers served a clear purpose. They successfully built wide, casual, low-stakes alliances. But the deep processors, the ones who couldn't stand meaningless chatter, were the true, unyielding evolutionary anchors of the community. They were the ones who formed the unbreakable, hyper-focused, high-trust bonds that held the core inner group safely together. They analyzed complex tribal crises, decoded silent micro-expressions of hidden danger, and kept the entire community stable and anchored. You naturally crave systemic substance over chaotic, superficial noise, and this design makes perfect sense from an evolutionary perspective. But let's look closely into the mirror for a moment. And let's be entirely, brutally honest with ourselves here. Sometimes our intense intellectual hatred for small talk hides a much darker, quieter psychological truth. We have to ask the hard question: is this genuinely a preference for depth, Or is it a defensive shield for social anxiety? True psychological maturity allows you to navigate a brief surface conversation with grace without feeling personally violated by it. But if basic pleasantries fill you with an icy dread, panic, or a desperate burning need to flee, you might be terrified of vulnerability. It is dangerously easy to use the convenient excuse of hating small talk to completely avoid the terrifying risk of being seen at all.
One is a conscious, beautiful choice for profound meaning. The other is a protective wall built entirely out of raw fear. Only you know which currency your mind is truly running on, and this deep-seated blueprint almost always traces back to your childhood. Perhaps you were the unique kid who never understood the highly superficial, repetitive games the other children constantly played. You were the one sitting quietly in the corner, staring at the sky, asking your parents intense, unsettling questions about the universe, only to be met with an exhausted sigh and the dismissive words, "You think way too much for your own good." You learned incredibly early that your natural frequency was simply too heavy for the average person to carry, so you chose silence. You built an inner sanctuary that was immensely rich, vivid, and complex, an entire world hidden safely away from the surface noise. And now, as an adult, dragging your mind out of that beautiful depth to comment on a morning commute feels like an insulting waste. In Swedish culture, there is a beautiful concept known as lagom, which translates to a deep cultural respect for silence over unnecessary noise. They don't view quietness as social awkwardness. They see it as a profound, elegant form of mutual human respect. They refuse to pollute the empty space with meaningless sound just because modern society is wildly uncomfortable with silence. So give your mind permission to breathe. It is entirely okay if you do not care about a stranger's vacation plans. You are not broken. You are not antisocial. Your battery is simply tuned to a completely different, deeply meaningful frequency. Protect it. If this brought clarity, subscribe. Comment below. What small talk question drains your battery fastest? Let's talk below. See you next time.